All right, y'all. What's up, everybody? Good Saturday afternoon to my peeps here. I'm doing a very special KJ52 live podcast, and I'm going to rebroadcast this actually on Sunday like I usually do. So if you've never checked me out on my podcast, it is just simply KJ52 Podcast, and you can search that on any of your streaming sites and get this plus a lot of stuff. So last night, I had the pleasure of sharing a message with our young adults, and it was called originally it was called 20 Things I Wish I Knew at 20, but that's way too long to talk. And then I narrowed it down to, maybe 10 things I wish I knew at 20. And then I'm like, that's going to be a lot to talk about. So instead, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do 3 things I wish I knew at 20 years old. Now, I just turned 51 a couple months ago, and it has definitely put me in reflective mode, reflective time, looking back on, where God's brought me. And I thought, man, what would I tell my 20-year-old self? So I'm going to share with you guys the same message that I gave to them last night. So hopefully this will speak to you. If you have any moment where you have a question or a comment, feel free to just drop it in the chat wherever you're watching this, and I will do my best to answer as many as I can, or I'll just answer them at the end. So if you have a question related to something that I'm talking about, I will either try to grab it while I'm talking or grab it at the very end. So let's make this interactive. Big shout out to everybody on my Instagram that's tuning in, and on YouTube, and on Facebooks, and all the other stuff. So again, if you miss any of this or you jump in at a later date, feel free to watch it on my podcast. I drop them at 5:02 p.m. every Sunday. KJ52 Podcast. It's on Apple. It is on YouTube, 52 Television, and it's also on Spotify. All right. Like I said, nothing to it but to do it. All right, so here we go. It is 20 things I wish I knew at 20, summed down to the top 3. And by the way, the 3 that I'm actually going to do were the 3 that they voted on. So we actually did, I don't know what I would call this, maybe like when I was a kid, I used to read these books called Choose Your Own Adventure, and you would kind of actually go through the book by picking things. So this was like choose your own sermon. So these are the 3 that they picked. They wanted to know. I have a bunch more, but I might just explore those at a later date. So anyway, I'm yapping. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dive right on in, and I want to show you guys, starting off, I want to show you a picture. I want to show you a picture. This is me at 20 years old. All right, here I is. This was actually at Christmas time. My hair was not that high. It's actually a shadow. I had a really tight buzz cut. I had what I called the white boy John B. fade. This was at Christmas at my grandma's, and that's why I got a little present in my lap there. And I'm rocking my favorite Fila shirt. I'm pretty sure my wife, not then, now, gave that to me for Christmas. So I was super happy with it. I had my little struggle bus goatee in the shot. Anyway, that's Jonah at 20 years old. And I want to tell you a little bit about that guy that you see in that picture. First of all, he had moved out. He was living at a friend's house, actually a friend's parents' house. And I moved out pretty quick. I think I was close to 18 and a half when I moved out. He had not yet met his now wife. Now, we just celebrated 28 years of marriage last June. And I'll say that Jonah had been looking to find the person he was going to marry, but actually that Jonah was getting ready to go off to Bible college. So when I met her, it was completely not on the plans. So I'll dive into more of that in a minute. But that same Jonah was desperately trying to get to Bible college. He had no money, and he couldn't get any loans to actually go. Now, here's a weird thing about that time. I don't know if this has changed. I assume it has. But at that time, you could not get any sort of college loan unless you were 21 years old. So you had to actually be on your parents' to prove worth, to prove financial need. You had to be on your parents' taxes. And without diving into it, they had not filed the taxes. So I could not prove, even though I was an independent adult living on my own, paying my own bills, unless I had fathered a kid or gone into the military, the government did not look at me as an independent adult. So I could not apply to literally any type of financial aid, which was crazy. I think this has all changed since then. But the point being is that I wanted to go off to Bible college. I wanted to study to become a pastor, and I couldn't do it. So at 20 years old, I was completely stuck in this holding pattern. I was actually working a really low-paying job as at a flower shop, and I had no particular real skills. I had done 1 year of community college with no particular degree. And, I was just starting to do my music. I had actually just kind of done my first demo about a year before. But it was a dead end. I mean, it's not like things blew up or things were opening up. I had just came back from like the first show I'd ever flown out to. I'd actually opened up for the Gospel Gangsters at the time. But again, nothing was really popping off. Nothing was really happening. I was in this holding pattern of my life. And also, I was a new Christian. So at 20 years old, I was only 5 years saved. I had actually given my life to Jesus in my bedroom. And I was serving the Lord. I mean, I was a youth leader. I was, trying to plug myself in as much as I could, as much as anywhere I could. But for all intents and purposes, I felt like I was in a holding pattern. So if I could go back in time and talk to this guy, if I could talk to this dude at 20, what would I tell him? Would I tell him to buy Bitcoin? Would I tell him to get Apple stock? Would I tell him don't wear that shirt? Would I tell him don't date that person? The reality is I don't think I would do any of that. What I would actually tell that guy would be a lot deeper. And the thing that I didn't understand back then, is that your 20s aren't about finding yourself. They're actually about forming yourself. And that's a phrase that I said last night, is that the 20s are not about finding yourself. They're about forming yourself. And so they are about forming the habits, the relationships, the priorities, and the decisions that become the person that you'll spend the next 30 years trying to become, or you'll be trying to undo, depending on what you pick. So here are three things that I would like to say, the three things that they asked me to talk about, the top three. And here's what I also want you to do. I want you to do an exercise. Wherever you're watching this, I want you to think back 10 years ago. I want you to think back to where you were 10 years ago. Now, if you're going from 35 to 25, it's not as big of a deal. 45 to 35, not as big a deal. But if you're in your 20s thinking back 10 years prior, man, that's a massive jump. If you go from 10 to 20, that is a massive jump of your time. Now, I also want you to take a minute and I want you to think ahead 10 years, think ahead 20 years, think ahead 30 years. And as you think ahead, think of all the life changes that you would want to be at. So I am just here from the future, from 30 years in the future, to talk to you about what I would tell myself 30 years ago. All right. So that's a great exercise to realize where you were versus where you're going. And even to think of where you might be. Simple as that. So that being said, the first one they wanted to know about, this is the first one they wanted to know about. They wanted to know about falling in love, which makes sense when you're in your 20s that you would want to know about, falling in love. Simple as that. And here's what I'll say. This is a little picture of me and my now wife. So at the time, she's 2 years younger than me. So she would have been, I think I'm 21 in this picture. Maybe 22, probably 21. So she's about 19. Possibly 20. We got married. I was 22. She was 20. We met basically through a mutual friend and acquaintance. We were kind of running in the same circles. We both were going to this singles Bible study. We were both essentially, going and serving at a place that was really significant to my life. It was called Chrysalis, but I didn't know who she was. I mean, I kind of knew I was actually friends with her brother. I would go to her brother's house and hang out and do a Bible study. But I didn't know who she was. She was in the peripheral. And in fact, I'll be honest with you, I actually thought that I was going to marry the person I met at Bible college because I was getting ready to go off. I started my whole one semester of Bible college, Southeastern. Shout out to Southeastern University. I went there for one whole semester, okay? It's funny to me because they list me as alumni, and I'm like, does that really count if you're only there for 4 months? Either way, the point is I love the school. It's a great school. It's come a long way from when I was there for sure. But I thought that was my plan. I was going to go there, and that's when I was going to meet the person. I was going to probably find somebody that's doing ministry, just like I'm doing ministry. And sure enough, God had other ideas. And the funny thing about it was our actual first date was actually going to the housing projects. So at the time, I was going down on Saturdays. I was ministering and volunteering with this inner city ministry that I eventually went on staff with. And I was doing like stuff with the youth. I was, performing. I was doing outreaches there. I was doing all kinds of stuff there. But one thing I usually did pretty regularly is every Saturday I'd get up and go and do kids ministry in the housing projects. And I think at this point in my life, I was just through playing around. And I was like, hey, do you like kids? This is when I started talking to her on the phone. And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, every Saturday, this is what I do. Would you like to go? So I didn't actually have a formal date with her. I wanted to see if she would be down to do the thing that I'm doing, because to me, that was the deal breaker. And I think you reach a point in your dating life in your 20s where you should actually date with the intention to marry, meaning you should get past the kid stuff and you should date with intention, right? You should be meeting people with an intention. So when it comes to falling in love, there needs to be things that you are qualifying the person for. You know, you got to throw out the whole junior high, I like you, do you like me? Do you want to go and have some Star Crunches? I don't know what they do now these days in junior high. Maybe they don't even go eat Star Crunches and milkshakes like I did. But the point being is you got to date with intention. If you want to fall in love and do it God's way, you got to date with intention. And I say that because in your 20s, you should be like having some intention behind what you do. Throw the kid stuff out. It's time to move on. It's time to grow up. Okay? Simple as that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to save you years of heartbreak. I want you to stop looking for someone who's exciting, and I want you to start looking for someone who's surrendered, right? Because attraction gets you started, but character gets you home. That's what I wanted to say to them. And I said this to them last night. Attraction gets you started. You should have attraction, okay? That should be there. But character gets you home. The Bible talks about charm is deceptive, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is worthy to be praised. You still need to have attraction, right? But a lot of people ask, who should I date? Very few people ask, who am I becoming? I'll let that one sit there for a minute. A lot of people say, who should I date? Who should I go out with? Who should I meet? Who should I find people? How do I find people? And yet very few people ask the question of themselves, what is the person that I'm becoming? Where is my purpose? Where am I heading to? What am I doing? What does God call me to do? Simple as that. And so a couple things to understand also is that marriage doesn't solve loneliness. It actually only magnifies what's already inside you. Okay, marriage doesn't solve loneliness. It just magnifies what's already inside. Healthy people build healthy marriages. Broken people multiply brokenness. Okay, healthy people build healthy marriages. And that's not saying, listen, we're all works in progress. I'm not saying you need to be healthy, perfect, good to go, all your problems done before you get married. Healthy just means you're moving towards health. Okay, broken people multiply brokenness in a marriage. And so the verse that I really wanted to share with you and sit in is the verse I shared with them last night, which is Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. So there's a couple things I told them last night in this verse that I thought is really powerful. First of all, he who finds, that's the first part of the verse. He who finds, what does that imply? Very simple. That implies active, right? Not passive. He who finds, if you go out and find something, I found $5 in the parking lot, or hey, I found the ring that I was missing, or hey, I found this cool little coffee shop. It all implies active. So sitting in your house, doing nothing to actually find anybody, speak to anybody, connect with anybody, just waiting on God to drop the person out of the air is the opposite of what this verse says. This verse says, he who finds a wife finds what is good, okay? Meaning it's a good thing to be married, right? It's God's intention. It's God's design. These are good things in life. Hookup culture, friends with benefits, sleeping around, no commitment, kids out of wedlock. These are not good things, okay? What is actually a good thing is finding a wife, finding a spouse, finding a husband, okay? Now you're like, well, that's a sexist verse. It's only talking to the guys. I'll put it both ways. He who finds a husband finds what is good, okay? And receives favor from the Lord. So all of the things about this verse imply active, going for it, looking for it, praying for it, being active about it, not being passive. If you're struggling in this area, then that would be the first thing I would ask you. Are you being active or are you being passive, right? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you asking? Are you connecting? Are you working on yourself? Are you being active? Or are you just simply waiting on God to do it for you? Or are you just too scared to do it yourself, right? That's the key thing about this verse. And so the thing I told him last night, and I'll tell you, is that if you want to find the person that you to fall in love with, it's not about finding someone who completes you. It's actually about finding someone who's running towards Jesus right beside you. Okay? It's finding someone who's running towards Jesus right beside you. Simple as that. So become the person that you're praying to marry. All right? Don't just look for the one, become the one. Become the thing that you're actually trying to pray for. I was looking for somebody that would do ministry with me. So I was doing ministry. I was becoming the person that I wanted to marry. Not, you get what I'm saying. I'm becoming the thing. I'm chasing after the thing. I'm running after the thing. I'm active about the thing that I want to see in a spouse. And that's what it was. So that's why our first date was to go to the housing projects and do ministry, because that was where my purpose was. I didn't know everything at 20. I barely knew anything. I knew I was like, God, I think you're calling me to do ministry, and I think it's in the inner city, and I want to do music, and so I want to do that too. And so that's what I was running towards. I knew this much, but what I knew I was running after. Simple as that. And that's the key phrase there, is that it's not about finding someone who completes you. It's finding someone who's running towards Jesus right beside you. That is a great way to start it. All right. Point number 2 that I talked about last night was finances. All right. And so here's a couple things to understand about in your 20s is that money is a wonderful servant, but it's also a terrible master. Jesus talked about money constantly, not because he wanted something from us, but because he knew that money competes for our heart, right? If you want to know where your heart's at, look at 2 things. Look at what you're searching for on the internet, and look at where your bank account is, right? You're going to find out where your heart leans towards. Now, most people spend money trying to look rich while they actually become poor. Isn't that funny? Where I'm from, we call that hood rich, right? You got the nice car, but you live in the projects. You got the nice sneakers, but you got no money in your account. You're hood rich, right? And you can spend money trying to look rich, but actually going poor in the process, which defeats the purpose. God's economy is different. God's economy says, live below your means, give generously, and save consistently. And above all else, avoid debt when possible. Okay, so this is something I had to learn the hard way many times, and I'm still a work in progress in this area. But Lord, help me. Help me to get better. God, help me to live below what I have. Help me to give generously with what I do have. Help me to save on a consistent basis. And God, help me to avoid debt, because the Bible says very simple, that the borrower is servant to the lender. Simple as that. So financial peace is never about how much you make. It's about who's in charge. And the verse that I wanted to look at for that one is Proverbs 13:11 says, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. So what's dishonest money? Is that just hustling? Is that just doing things in the wrong way? Is that just doing stuff in a dishonest way? Of course. But I would say dishonest money is also money that you don't steward well. Meaning, if you have dishonest money and you're not putting forth the first fruits of it towards God, then you're being dishonest with your money, because the truth is it all belongs to him in the first place. So any money that you have that you're not willing to tithe on, or you're not willing to give generously with, or you're not willing to just let go, that is dishonest money, and you will find that money dwindling away. But whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow, all right? So this goes back to the same principle. Take your money, gather it little by little, continue to make that grow, and make sure your money is not dishonest money, all right? So everybody wants to get rich quick. God usually works slow. Small little decisions actually become big blessings. Now, I wish somebody had told me that consistency in money beats excitement in money. The dumb, boring stuff, it's not dumb by any means, I'm being sarcastic, but saving, giving, budgeting, tithing, these are the boring habits that become freedom later. So start managing money God's way before you have it. If you can handle a little bit, you'll handle a lot more. God's not just interested in increasing your income, He's interested in increasing your faithfulness to the income that he gives you. So if I could sit down with my 20-year-old self, I'm not going to tell him, here's all the mistakes that you need to avoid. I actually would just say, hey, start trusting Jesus with your money sooner. I'd tell him that credit cards are not limitless. And I'd tell him the best thing I can discover in my 20s isn't my career, it's actually my creator. All right? So the third one that they wanted to ask me about was future. And one of the things that they wanted me to talk about is, just how to manage your future, how to manage, where you're going, what you're doing, all this stuff. And the thing about that I had to learn was that many are the plans, is a verse that I live by quite a bit. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord who directs the purpose. And so here's me and the wifey. That's at our reception. And we were heading, after what could only be described as one of the most challenging weddings that I've ever been to, and it was mine. Everything that could have gone wrong at that wedding kind of did. They didn't turn on the air conditioner. Actually, the air conditioner was broke. It was in the middle of June, so we were sweating to death. The ring bearer, my brother-in-law, passed out in the middle of the wedding. It was so hot inside the wedding space, the church, is that when we went to take our 2 candles and light the unity candle, all the wax poured off of it because it was liquid and put out the unity candle. The DJ announced our name wrong. He called us Sargento. What else? Oh, they sewed my wife's arms shut on her wedding dress. She couldn't get into it. Two of the people in my wedding party didn't have their bow tie, which I was one of them. It's just like everything could have gone wrong, went wrong that day. And the thing I understood about that was that, you can plan for a lot of stuff, but it's not going to always go your way. And so you really, if you want to understand how to navigate your future, it's how to be adaptable. It's how to bring the Lord through every situation. It's how not to panic. It's how not to give up. It's how to continue to press on. Because I remember when like we poured the wedding, we tried to light the candles and to put it out. And then the minister walked off the stage and I'm like, man, we're doing so bad. He quit. He comes back and lights it on fire like for us. And that's what you need sometimes. When my brother-in-law passed out, he leaned over to us and he said, y'all, he just passed out. Just keep going. Right. And it was just a good picture of what being married really is, but it's a picture of your future period. And so we live in a time where social media has convinced us that everybody's ahead of us, right? Somebody already bought a house, somebody already's married, somebody's already traveling, somebody already launched a business. Meanwhile, we're like, do I have the ability to afford the extra guacamole at Chipotle, right? And, one of the greatest quotes is, comparison is the thief of joy, especially when you're on somebody else's highlight reel. Comparison is the thief of joy. But Jeremiah, if you don't know the book, he writes a story, writes a verse that is very famous, and he writes it to those that were in exile. And he's not writing to people in perfect situations. He's writing about the future, but he's like writing to people in a really sucky situation. And basically what he's saying is this: I know the plans I have plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So God's plans don't disappear when your plans disappear. And even that verse, if you break it down, it says, first of all, God knows the plans he has for you, right? He's already mapped it out. He's already got that. His plan is to prosper you and not to harm you. Now, we use that word prosper to just go, I'm going to get everything I want. Prosperity just really means I'm doing exactly what God has for me in God's way, in God's timing. And I plan to not harm you, plans to give you a hope, and plans to give you a future. So we can rest in this. Now, he's writing this to people in a very, very tough situation. That's who he's writing to, which that would have been like, you kidding, bro? Look at us. We're in Babylon. We're in exile. We're not even back where we're from. But when you're 20, or anytime really, it feels like everybody else has got it figured out. But when it comes to our future, God's not asking you to know your next 20 years. He's asking you to just trust him with your next 20 days, right? It's easy to think 20 years. What if we just focus on the next 20 days? Maybe you just need to focus on the next 20 minutes, right? And be present in that. At that time of my life, I was worried about doors that never existed. Meanwhile, God was opening doors that I didn't even imagine. And so you have to understand, right around when I was 20-something is when I got my first record deal. I thought everything was going to happen. I thought the tours would open up, the doors would happen. Instead, I get my record deal. My album comes out. It is in the stores. And I'm having to work basically 3 jobs, if you can imagine this. I was working at a flower shop, delivering flowers. In the evenings, I was doing phone surveys. And then about a month or 2 later, I was doing a census worker job before I jumped in and went full time. And the funny thing about it was, I didn't know it at the time, but learning how to drive a car efficiently and deliver flowers actually set me up for the touring that I would do for the next 2 years, because I'd have to drive my minivan everywhere to get from show to show to show. And if you show up late, that's a problem. The phone surveys that I was doing at night was actually teaching me how to have a good speaking voice on the phone, because the next 2 years I'd have to cold call youth pastors, talk to people on the phone, and get events and get shows. And the census worker job, I didn't realize at the time, was actually teaching me how to go cold call, knock on doors. Hey, who lives here? Get information, be friendly, connect with people, and move on to the next thing. And that is literally what you do at a show when you're meeting your fans. And so the 3 jobs that I was doing with a record in the stores and being frustrated about it was actually setting me up for what the next 3 years of my life was going to be. I didn't know it at the time, but God was using all of it for his glory, for his purpose, et cetera, et cetera. So the final thing I want to say to you is stop comparing your timeline to everyone else's timeline. Trust God's pace, and just know that your future is safer in God's hands than it is in your own. Okay? So that's my 3 things that I wanted to do. I found actually this old picture. This is me rocking some random show in Newport Richey. I'm selling photos I can see in the picture for $1 whole. I'm wearing a Kansas jersey. Don't ask me why. I'd never been to Kansas at the time. But a lot of this is just setting the stage for what was going to happen. It was setting the stage for what God was going to do in my life. And even on this picture, I found, the smile betrays probably one of the loneliest, hardest times of my life. The smile betrays, where I was not at yet. The smile kind of betrays the frustration that I was feeling. But through it all, God was faithful. God protected. God provided. He had a purpose behind all of it. And simple as that. And so big shout out to everybody that's been dropping stuff in the chat room. Brian says, hey, I've been patient and wise trying to find a spouse. He's amening me there. I love all these contents, all these captions that we're saying. This person says, Duke says, I used to buy hundreds of copies of your CDs to pass out. Oh, thank you so much. That's incredible. I appreciate that. Big shout outs to anybody in the Instagram that's been following me. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it below. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This is, again, like I said, also available as a podcast if you want to share it with anybody. That is KJ52 Podcast. Boom. Boom skis. All right. One more question on here. My grandma told us all the brides before our wedding. The only thing that can go wrong on your wedding day is just a funny story later on. Ain't that the truth? That is the absolute truth. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Sparklium says, I remember meeting you when you came to perform at our church. I worked the venue. You were one of the kindest. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Please judge me by my highlight reel, not my bad days. All right, my peeps. Well, I'm going to pray and we're going to end here. I love and appreciate all y'all. Thank you for hanging out with me this Saturday. Again, KJ52 Podcast is where you can peep all this. Father, in Jesus' name, God, help us to embrace every bit of what you have for us. We thank you in advance for your goodness and your grace. Thank you, God, that you've kept me for so many years and you've been so faithful to me and my family. And I know there's many more years ahead where you'll continue to do so. I love you, Lord, and my life is your life today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, my peeps, have a great day. Peace and God bless.